Greetings, it's me, Estelle Light, and I'm outspoken in Ohio. So I wrote a little letter to my white friends who get offended when I bring up the topic of racism. And it goes a little something like this. Dear fragile white friends who clutch their pearls when Black people mention racism, deepest apologies for the inconvenience of mentioning our historical trauma and ongoing oppression. How absolutely thoughtless of me to bring up centuries of chattel slavery and its modern manifestations while you're trying to enjoy your caramel macchiato. You seemed so shocked and appalled when I dare mention that racism still exists. Tell me what precisely about my lived experience as a Black woman sends you into such a tizzy. Is it the audacity of my truth-telling? Or the sheer nerve of me suggesting that America's racial utopia hasn't quite arrived yet? Now, let's review the timeline of this magnificent racial paradise you believe we inhabit. First, Black people enslaved for merely a few hundred years, just a blip in history, really. Jim Crow segregation, separate but equal, was totally equal, right? Lynchings, historical fashion statements involving trees and rope that some areas are still proudly keeping in vogue. How nostalgic. Police brutality. During those pesky peaceful protests, how dare we ask not to be killed? Isn't it fascinating how many George Floyd and BLM protests remained completely peaceful until police arrived in riot gear? Like in Cleveland, Ohio, for instance, where protesters were peacefully assembling until the peace officers decided peace wasn't exciting enough. What an amazing coincidence that violence erupted precisely when the peacekeepers showed up. Nothing says protecting and serving quite like tear gassing people exercising their constitutional rights. But wait! You gave us the right to use the same bathrooms as you and drink from the same water fountains. Shouldn't we be endlessly grateful? Should I throw a parade because I can now sit next to you at Applebee's? Why aren't Black people dancing in the streets with joy over these magnificent crumbs of basic humanity? Sorry to disappoint, but I left my tap shoes at home along with my thank you white people for recognizing Blacks do have basic human rights banner. You want us to pipe down about racism because acknowledging it makes your brunch uncomfortable. Because talking about racial injustices ruins your ability to believe America has moved beyond all that. How terribly inconsiderate of us to remind you that your comfort zone was built on our trauma. When you get more outraged about discussions about racism than actual racism, I don't need a magnifying glass to see where you stand. Your silence speaks volumes, and your defensiveness writes entire encyclopedias. You see, I love all people, and anyone who knows me can verify this. But loving humanity doesn't mean I need to walk around with racial rose-colored glasses pretending dangers don't exist for me and everyone who looks like me. I'd be an absolute fool to ignore the reality I'm living in just so you can feel better about yourself. So please continue being offended by my acknowledgement of racism rather than racism itself. Your discomfort with my truth-telling is actually the perfect barometer for how much work we still have to do. With all due respect, and that's exactly as much as due, a Black woman who refuses to sugarcoat reality for your comfort.